Hello, class. Today we are going to discuss logical fallacies. We specifically start to discuss them now in the cause and effect essay because logical fallacies are often used in arguments. And also, we want to start discussing them now because you will be doing research for this particular essay. So we want to be able to identify these fallacies in your research as well as in your writing. Okay, but first and foremost, what is a logical fallacy, you ask? Oh, I'm so glad you did. Okay, a logical fallacy is faulty reasoning or false logic. That's really what it is. It's something that has the appearance of a sound argument, but it is actually misleading. And really, to be able to identify them helps you to refute your opposition and redirect them to the truth. That's really why part of the reason why you want to be able to do that. Because when you can catch somebody using a logical fallacy in their argumentation, it's much easier for you to redirect your opposition as well as your audience back to the truth. So being able to do that is a great tool, as well as to make sure that you're not using these fallacies in your own arguments as you're presenting different pieces of evidence. Because if your piece of evidence is actually a fallacy, then your reader can easily identify that and could potentially just disagree with you based on that fallacy. But let's get into some specifics, okay? So I have this image here. Facebook is a wonderful place to find all kinds of fallacies because people tend to just share without thinking, and we do tend to kind of stay within our own frame of thinking. We often have arguments or disagreements on Facebook or any social media, really, but most of the time we're not looking to actually have authentic dialogue or looking for other people's opinions. We just want to show everyone else why we're right. So I have this particular image is actually a fallacy because think about it. Here it says President Reagan ignored AIDS until 20,849 Americans had already died. But tell me again how Obama's immediate response to 3 Ebola cases has been inadequate. Okay, here's why this is a fallacy. First of all, what does President Reagan ignoring AIDS have to do with Obama's handling of the Ebola crisis? These things are completely unrelated. This happened 30 years ago. This is happening, well, it was when this was posted. This was happening just last spring. So you have this issue right there that you're not comparing things that really can be compared. And then also think about it. Do you think that in hindsight, President Reagan may have chosen to handle the AIDS crisis differently had he known what he did eventually about AIDS? So does that mean that President Obama doesn't have to handle things correctly until things get really bad and he realizes how bad it is? Of course not. So really you're not making, it's not a logical argument to point to this one president and say, well, he didn't do this, so it's okay if my president doesn't do that. No, that's completely illogical. It makes no sense. Okay, but I'm going to talk about a few of the different types of fallacies, and actually you can identify them in this particular image as we are reviewing them. Okay, so first we have the straw man. In this argument, the speaker takes an argument, twists it, and then attacks the twisted argument. It's illogical because it takes the argument out of context and avoids the issue on which the argument is found. So if we go back to the President Reagan image, what happens here is you have taken the argument about how President Obama is or is not handling the Ebola crisis, and you're twisting it by pointing to President Reagan, and now you're attacking that twisted argument. That is not a logical argument at all. That is a classic straw man. But I have another example. Okay, so we have debater number 1 says cultural diversity cannot be our highest value. We must have cultural unity first. Once we are united as a nation, then we can enjoy our diversities. Okay, but then the next debater says we can't get rid of cultural diversity. It's what makes America great. If we only have unity, we'll become the same and live in a communist nation. So where's the twist? Okay, the first debater never said that we should get rid of cultural diversity. They just said it shouldn't be our highest value. The second debater twisted the argument And rather than talk about what should be our highest value, or maybe why cultural diversity should be our highest value, pointing to examples of why that should be the case, instead of doing that, they take the argument, they twist the argument, and then they try to reason with that. It makes absolutely no sense. So, straw man. Here's another example. After Will said that we should put more money into health and education, Warren responded by saying that he was surprised that Will hates our country so much that he wants to leave it defenseless by cutting military spending. Where's the straw man in here? Right here. After Will said that we should put more money into health and education, Warren responded by saying that he was surprised that Will hates our country so much that he wants to leave it defenseless by cutting military spending. Will never said that he wanted to cut military spending and leave our country defenseless. That's not what he said. He just said we should put more money into health and education. Maybe Will is someone who likes raising taxes and wants to tax everything so that he can pay for military spending and health and education and this and that. Maybe that's more his platform. I don't know. But either way, he never said that he wanted to cut military spending. But by twisting this argument, what Warren actually does is he starts to incite people by saying, like, well, clearly this person hates our country. He wants to leave our country defenseless. That is not at all what he said. And instead of Warren proposing his own reasons why maybe we should or should not put more money into health and education, he twists the argument and then uses that. Okay, then we also have circular reasoning. Okay, circular reasoning. A is true because B is true, and therefore B is true because A is true. The speaker's saying that this justifies a cause because of the effect when the effect is the same as the cause. So let me give you an example so that this becomes a little bit more clear for you. So an arguer uses his argument in support, this argument in support of gun rights. Our founding fathers were brilliant minds that crafted a perfect and unique document. Okay, fine. There you go. So that's the cause, right? Effect. Everything that they included in the original document should be left untouched because the original document was perfect and unique. So that would be the effect. The effect would be because it is perfect and unique, it should be left untouched. Okay. So because it should be left untouched because it's perfect and unique. It's perfect and unique, therefore it should be left untouched. You notice how this just keeps going around and around this particular argument? That's not a logical argument at all. You can't necessarily say, yes, they crafted a unique document anyway, but you can't necessarily say that it was a perfect document because guess what, guys? Where would that leave us with slavery or women's rights? None of that would exist if we had left the original document untouched. So right in and of itself, we have a good example of why this is circular reasoning, and you really can't use that as a logical argument. Okay, then we also have what are called ad hominem attacks. Ad hominem attacks are an attack on the man or attack against the person. In this, the arguer attacks the person making the argument rather than the argument itself. Donald Trump, anyone? Oh my word. He is right now, currently, probably the king of that in our political arena. So whether you like him, his policies or his ideas on what we need to do in our country or not is irrelevant. He actually tends to attack the person rather than present his own ideas. I think he's starting to shy away from that because he's finding it's not working as well. But that's my own personal take on that. But what it does is you are attacking the person rather than actually presenting just cause for why their particular argument is not right. So in this process, you have the first person makes a claim, the second person makes a personal attack, and therefore, and because of this particular thing on the personal attack, therefore it negates this person's claim. But those two are not necessarily related. So when you have, because I've been mentioning Donald Trump, when you have like Senator Marco Rubio make claims about what we should do as far as our defense and our defense in the Middle East, and he makes a specific claim like this is what we should do, and Donald Trump's response to him is, yeah, but you have stupid hair. That has nothing to do with it. So it doesn't matter. How about instead he says, you know what? I disagree with your idea on what we should do in the Middle East, and here's why. That's a logical argument. What he's doing otherwise is an illogical argument. And the problem with those are eventually they completely fall flat and you start to see the holes that are there. And then there's also another type of ad hominem attack, which is called the U2 attack. And so it attempts to justify a fault by accusing the opponent of the same thing. The example I have here, a parent asks a child to clean their room and the child responds, but you never clean your room. It's really irrelevant. It doesn't matter. The one has asked the other to do something, and it doesn't really matter if they have done it themselves or not. And applying this to that other level of thinking, if we go back to, let's say we were to go back to that whole talking about Marco Rubio and Donald Trump, and Rubio presents some ideas about how we should handle things in the Middle East, and then Donald Trump comes back with, yeah, well, you have stupid hair, and then let's say Marco Rubio came back and said, yeah, well, you have stupid hair too, my gosh, nobody even thinks it's real. One thing has nothing to do with the other, okay? So again, you can't do that. So it is really irrelevant. All right, the next fallacy we have is the genetic fallacy. The genetic fallacy is, we see this very frequently, unfortunately, in politics. It's something is judged as good or bad on the basis of where it comes from or from whom it came. And what it does is it avoids the argument by shifting the focus onto something's or someone's origins. And it's similar to ad hominem in that it leverages existing negative perceptions to make someone's argument look bad without presenting a case for why the argument itself lacks merit. So let me explain. What happens here is in the genetic fallacy, and like I said, we see this frequently in politics, and we see it on both sides of the aisle. So I'm not pointing to one side over the other. What happens is they tend to completely negate all ideas from the opposition simply because it came from the opposition. You can't tell me that every idea that comes out of the mouth of a Republican is bad or stupid or won't work. Every single idea, that's not possible. And you can't tell me that every idea that comes out of the mouth of a Democrat is bad or stupid or won't work. It is an illogical argument to say that everything is not going to be good because of the source. That is absolutely a false argument. That can't be true. And because not everyone is always going to be wrong on everything just because of their positions on things. And the problem with the genetic fallacy is, and we have found ourselves getting into this as a nation, is that when you do that, you actually stop dialogue. You no longer are having discussion, you're no longer having argument, and that's exactly what we've seen in the political arena. So you have to be careful of that. So an example I have is accused on the 6 o'clock news of corruption and taking bribes. The senator said that we should all be wary of the things we hear in the media because we all know how very unreliable the media can be. Well, you know what? That may be true. The media may be unreliable. But he can't just say that we shouldn't listen to what the media is saying because of who they are. How about if he addresses whether or not he has been taking bribes? That would be a better way of defending himself. But instead, if you or she points to the media and says, oh, well, you know how the media is, you can't, that makes absolutely no sense. You have to defend the actual points, not this whole where it came from thing. Okay, and then the last one that I'm going to talk about, the last fallacy, is called the slippery slope, and that's or the domino effect. In this argument, one particular circumstance sets off a chain reaction that leads to a series of detrimental effects. The problem here is that the result rests on the happening of several reactions, but there's no guarantee that the chain of reactions will occur. So really what this does is when you have the slippery slope, you're saying that if A happens, you take the first part and then you jump to the last part and you have this whole series of things that have to happen in the middle in order for this last part to happen. I tell this story all the time. My husband is so funny. He's such a worst case scenario guy. My daughters could say, hey, we have the day off on Thursday. We want to go to the beach. And he'll say, oh no, you can't go to the beach because You could, you're going to go to the beach and you're going to lay out in the sun all day, and you're going to get tired from laying out in the sun all day, and you're probably going to be a little bit dehydrated on top of it. And then you're not going to want to come home until later in the day, and the sun doesn't set until like 8:30 at night, and you're going to be driving home with the sun setting in your eyes, because when you come home from Hampton Beach, you are driving west and the sun is directly in your eyes, and then a deer could jump out in front of you, and you're going to swerve, and you're going to go off the road, and you're going to roll the car, and you could die. I'm not exaggerating when I say my husband has actually made arguments like this. He's so funny sometimes. We just sort of sit there and go, oh my goodness, how did they go from wanting to go to the beach to dying on the side of the road? That is a slippery slope argument through and through. And that's a funny example of it. But when it happens in the real world, as far as, say, in politics, because that's often where we see a lot of these things, and in research, that's a problem. So my example that I have is, if we allow same-sex couples to marry, then the next thing we know, we'll be allowing people to marry their parents, their cars, and even monkeys. Okay. Whether you agree or disagree on same-sex marriage is irrelevant to this particular slippery slope argument. What happens is, people take the original argument, allowing same-sex couples to marry, and then they take it to the next step. We're going to allow people to marry their parents and their cars and even monkeys. And when you do, the reason people use these arguments is because when you get here, people will say, well, obviously we don't want people to be allowed to marry animals, like that's not okay. Or what about if we ended, or even children or infants? People would agree, generally speaking, that would not be an okay thing. And so you set forward this series of events that lead from one thing to the next, and therefore leading to what you would consider the worst case. And that is an illogical argument, because you cannot necessarily say, just because this thing happens does not mean the next thing will happen, or the next thing will happen, or even the next thing will happen. The odds of all of those things happening are very slim, and you can't necessarily stop something from happening because you're afraid of the end result. So you just need to be careful of that. Okay, so these are some fallacies. Like I said, there are more, and I will discuss some more at another time, but I really want you to keep these in mind as you're doing your research, and be looking for those to make sure that you're not using any of the fallacies in your writing, and that you're not thinking in this way in your writing. So, all right, that is it for today, and I will talk to you later. Bye.